jeans, pants, like pieces of fabric from a shirt, stuff like that. So they get it back to the county examiner so they can find out the identity of these human remains. The Butte County Sheriff had went on television later on that day and said they discovered remains of an identified person. They didn't say whether it was a male, female. They didn't know. They found an identified person. At that same time, the Butte County Sheriff's Office received an anonymous phone call that identified the remains as belonging to Tina Sharp.
Okay.
But the call was not documented in the case. The only reason why we know about this call today is because a recording of this call was found at the bottom of the evidence box in some point in 2013 Jesus. By the deputy that was assigned to this case. So a forensic pathologist did an autopsy of the remains and confirmed that it was those of Tina Sharp.
And it was confirmed in that same year that the remains were found.
Yes, it was 1984. Bottle collector found the remains. Police are called. They collect the remains. A pair of a blue nylon jacket, blanket, Levi jeans, surgical tape. They didn't announce who it was because they didn't know who it was. And then an anonymous phone call comes in and said those remains that you found were that of Tina Sharp's.
Okay.
And it's just no one says anything about the phone call. And the only reason we know about this phone call is because the investigator assigned to the case now, back in 2013, had found a recording of the call in the bottom of an evidence box.
Seems like pretty sloppy detective work, but
it sounds like a fucking cover-up.
Yeah.
So, this sounds like a cover-up. Who are they covering up? Well, let's go back to the first suspect in this case. Let's talk about Marty Smart, the father of Justice Smart. Pretty much what's known about him is that he was married to Marilyn Sharp, but they were going through marital problems. It was supposedly the marriage was an abusive marriage. Supposedly. And also supposedly that Marilyn was going through these issues and knew that Sue had been through similar marital issues in terms of domestic abuse, and that she was receiving advice from Sue on what to do. And Sue was telling her, get the hell out of there. Get your kids and get the hell out of there.
So, hold on. This is Sue's ex-husband, who's now married to another lady who's also...
No. Her husband is in Connecticut. She has Sue's husband is in Connecticut or somewhere on the Eastern Seaboard. He does not know where Sue is.
Okay.
This Marty Smart is a totally different person. This is a totally different person married to Marilyn Smart.
Got it. Okay, got it.
So they're going through. So Marilyn and Marty are going through these issues. Marilyn's supposedly getting advice from Sue what to do. Sue's telling her to leave. Marty's hearing about this advice and not having it. He doesn't like Sue being involved in their marriage. And he's not liking that too much. Supposedly. This is what we're getting supposedly. That could be the reason why he possibly killed him, because shortly after the murders had taken place, Marty leaves town and goes to Reno, Nevada, and never comes back to Keddie. Shortly after he leaves town, gets the hell out of there. Him and his friend, a guy by the name of Bodis, who was supposedly a hitman and enforcer for the Chicago and Vegas mob, who had been had came to Marty and Marilyn's house to stay for a few days.
Okay.
Supposedly, these are the two main suspects.
Okay. I mean, yeah, like it. The what's his name? Martin.
Marty. Yeah, Marty. Oh yeah, Marty. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty believable believable story that, he didn't want Sue to be meddling in his marriage, and so allegedly he was abusive, so he could have had, ill intentions, and the fact that he skipped town right after makes it even more suspect.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be just circumstantial. It doesn't mean that he's involved in the murders, but he does seem like a likely suspect, although not tied to by any like DNA or any forensic evidence. But the story does seem likely, I guess. Could be likely.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, but okay, I don't see why you would, if supposedly this is true, that another woman is getting involved in your marriage because she's counseling them to leave, whether you feel it's right or it's wrong. Why would you kill her and some of her children on a night where your son is in the same house as them?
I mean, looking from our perspective, it might not make sense, but if it was like a crime of passion, if he just went there to confront her and then things escalated, I know it just seems like the murders seem awfully brutal, though, with throat slashings and panties being stuffed in mouths. Yeah, I don't know. That might be a little too much. I mean, I guess that's the question. Like, do we believe these are premeditated murders, or
this is a rage killing? So? Yeah, especially if this was premeditated, you would particularly not kill them if it's Marty Smart, if he is the actual killer. I don't think you would kill him while your son was there.
That's a fair point. Or maybe,
I don't think.
That's what he would want us to think. Maybe the son was there intentionally to say that there's no, that would be his alibi to say, I couldn't have done these murders. My son was in the same house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there could be an alibi, but also you give one big problem with that: your actual son. If you're like, it's kind of like, especially with Greg and Rick, and that's another thing with Greg and Rick. I don't know, did they see the murders or not? Um, that's another thing. Like we expressed a couple of years ago with the Kelly Hopkinsville incident, that the kid, like, hey, kids will lie at first, but they have a propensity to tell the truth eventually. And that the fact that these kids have gone into young adults, middle age adults, and they still tell the same story, which that night did happen back in 1955. Or Greg and Rick, I mean, or even Justin, eventually, I think you see it more with Justin. You potentially will tell the truth eventually, and I think to somewhat that he might have told the truth and whatever, but it still tells you that it was a lie, and it keeps falling apart because he keeps changing his story about, well, first he didn't see anything, then he said he felt as though he dreamt it, then he actually saw it, and then he gives this, I mean, I don't know. And added to the fact that you had a couple of people that said they saw some weird cars in front of their um, behind the house. It's like someone saw something
Mm-hmm.
here. I mean, here, let me give you this weird quote that I found from one of the neighbors. He said, when he heard the news, I was shocked when I heard the news. I was out the day before with Sue and her kids cutting firewood. This is from her neighbor, Tony the Greek Gardelis. But here's the thing. Cabin 28 had no wood stove in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
So you were not out the next day cutting firewood with them. Also, he's another suspect, supposed suspect.
Interesting. And yeah.
I mean,
I was gonna say,
yeah,
and
go ahead, go
then
ahead.
he had alleged ties to some organized crime in Chicago.
Well, Marty Smart's friend,
John,
Bo
but yeah.
Bodus. Yeah, well, John Bodus. He had, or allegedly had ties to organized crime in Chicago. And actually, he died here back in 1988.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
And not only that, Marilyn goes on a little bit further with what she had said. Marilyn claimed that on the evening of the murders, she had left Martin and Bodis, Bo, Bodi, Bo at a local bar around 11 p.m. Returned home to go to sleep. Around 2 o'clock a.m. on April the 12th, she stated she awoke to find the two burning an unknown item in the wood stove. And that she also stated that allegedly Marty hated Johnny Sharp with a passion. For what reason, we do not know.
Yeah, and then here it says in 2008, in a 2008 documentary, Sheriff Doug Thomas said he had personally interviewed Martin, and then Martin had passed a polygraph examination. I mean, we know about polygraph.
Polygraphs, and also with him, sheriff the sheriff, he's been accused of, like, supposedly him and Marty were friends. Now, Sheriff Thomas will deny this and say, no, we were not. I was not friends with Marty, but he was an acquaintance of him. There was supposedly a rumor that Sheriff Thomas had given marriage counseling to Marty and Marilyn. Marilyn denies it.
Okay.
That's where it comes up, this cover up. is going on. That part of the thing is one theory that Marty is the murderer,